Do you want Detroit sports talk done right? Yeah! If you want it, you got it. It's Detroit sports talk with attitude. It's the Knee Jerks with Eno and Big Al.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like at this time to introduce to you one of the finest running backs in the United States of America, and our number one pick, Barry Sanders.
Here's Isaiah. Let's see what we got. All the way up. Go!
We might not be in your car or on your transistor radio, but we're bringing you the best of Detroit sports past, present, and future. It's time for the Knee Jerks with two guys who know Detroit sports. Here's Greg Eno and Al Beaton.
27th, 2021, and it's an Olympics edition of the Knee Jerks, Detroit Sports Talk of Eno and Big Al. I am not a gold medal winner, or even a bronze or a silver medal winner, but I am a podcaster, blogger, bon vivant man about town, Al Beaton. Joining me, as always, is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things, and loves posting his dinners on Facebook, and that would be Greg Eno. What's up? You always make me hungry when I look at your feed.
Yeah, that's why it's called a feed. You know. Thanks, Al Beaton, for that introduction. I am Greg Eno from my WordPress Out of Bounds blog. You can catch that just about every week, Monday or Tuesday generally. Came out with a piece kind of harkening back to the 1972 Tigers and when they acquired Woody Fryman.
Woody Fryman, who was that was something else. Maybe we should just make a history podcast and just talk about stuff like that instead.
Right. Trade deadline's coming up. Even though it wasn't a trade, it was still a late season acquisition.
Right.
So I decided to just kind of wax nostalgic about that. But check me out there. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno and follow the Knee Jerks on Twitter at the Knee Jerks. And we've got lots to talk about because there's a lot going on with several of the teams around town, and also some stuff going on outside of Detroit. We'll get to that in a moment. But before we get to what Al has on his agenda, we're going to play a game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro?
We baked you a birthday cake. If you get a tummy ache and you moan and groan and woe, don't forget we told you so. Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give a clue or two or three of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports, and Al can correctly guess that person within the first two clues to receive a brand new in-car stereo system installed by Cartoons.
I actually bought a stereo from that company once. I really did. Cartoons. Sure, I think I got it in Allen Park, if I remember right.
It was either that or I was going to give you some van stuff by Burmeister, but I decided to give you...
yeah, Cartoons. I think right. Cartoons. Yeah. Oh, good Lord. We're really showing our age now.
We could have gone
going back to about 1980 or something like that.
Could have gone Mickey Shore. I don't know.
Oh, God, Mickey Shore. There's another one, yeah.
Yeah, I decided to go with, could have gone with Bamboo Records. I don't know. Anyway.
Peaches Records. Peaches Records and Tapes at Harmony House.
Peaches Records and the Harmony House, yeah. Of course. My gosh. This person, Al, made his name, and boy did he make his name in the world of baseball. One of the most... I usually don't pick somebody this famous because sometimes it's hard to give clues without giving it away. But he was born on this date in 1905. He passed away in 1991.
Oh, wow.
He was a Baseball Hall of Famer, and he was a player and a manager. I will tell you that. Mm-hmm. All of his career. I think. Let me double check that. Was he always in the? He played a little bit in the American League briefly at the beginning of his career. Mm-hmm. But everything after that, both player and manager, was all done in the National League. And he was a quite famous man in the world of baseball. And one more thing I'll tell you is that he was married to somebody very famous.
I'll just go throw this. How about Leo DeRocher?
Yeah, that might have given it away actually. Leo DeRocher. Leo the Lip. Yeah, it's hard to do Leo. I was almost going to do Irv Cross, but I said that might be a little bit too. But because Irv Cross.
Yeah, you would have had to bring up the NFL Today or something. Probably.
Yeah, that kind of would have given away too.
Yeah.
But Leo was born today in 1905. He was of course a Baseball Hall of Famer. Played for the Yankees briefly, and then the rest of his career was with the National League, the Reds, the Cardinals, the Dodgers. Then of course was manager of the Dodgers, manager of the Giants, manager of the Cubs. The Astros.
I think people of today don't realize just how famous Leo DeRocher was. As you said, he was married to a celebrity, for Christ's sake.
He was married to Lorraine Day, the actress, and he was almost more known for that than he was anything else, although he was certainly well-known in baseball and a coach for the Dodgers, which I did know. He coached for the Dodgers from 61 to 64 under Walt Alston. I did not know that. But Leo took over the Cubs. It was funny because the Cubs, if you might remember this, Al, they used to have something in the early 60s called the College of Coaches.
Yes, I am familiar with that, yes.
Where they did not have a manager, a designated manager. They had coaches that would take their turn.
Yeah, they rotated, yeah.
And, of course, that was completely unsuccessful, of course. Yes. And when Leo was named the manager, right after the heels of this College of Coaches debacle, he said at his press conference, let me get this thing. Let me say one thing right off the top. I'm the manager of the damn team. No more College of Coaches. And Leo actually did pretty good.
And don't forget his most famous quote.
No, nice guys finish last?
Nice guys finish last.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he did a pretty good job with the Cubs, brought them from oblivion to not the playoffs, but close to the playoffs.
What year was that famous collapse? Was that 69?
69, yeah. The famous black cat. Remember the black cat?
Yes, exactly.
But anyway, the Leo, so good job there.
Leo Lip.
Yep,
yes.
Yep, absolutely.
Boy, this is really a history-based podcast song.
Yes.
We've talked about, ancient car stereo places and record stores, Leo DeRocher and
Woody Fryman.
Yeah, Woody Fryman. God, we really do show our age sometimes when we talk on this podcast, don't we? Oh, my God. Anyway, all right, we got a lot to cover, so enough dilly-dallying and chit-chat. Is there anything else we need to add before we move on?
No.
All right. No. So let's move on to the topics du jour. We got a lot going on. As I mentioned to Greg before we started recording, we had Steve Yzerman go on a Troy Weaver-esque tear over the past couple weeks with some trades, free agency moves, and obviously they had to draft. The Tigers are coming up on a trade deadline. I believe that is this weekend. Al Avila is saying, we are not rebuilding anymore. We are building, so any trades are going to be focused on actually getting players that help the team win in the next year or two. We'll talk a little bit about that. The NCAA is they're just going nuts right now of Texas and Oklahoma deciding to bail on the Big 12 and go to the SEC. And we got to talk a little bit about COVID. I think we'll start with COVID because the NFL made some big news about this week, and we're going to see the fallout, especially because training camp starts this week, right? I think the Lions rookies have already reported, and the veterans report this week. They'll actually be in pads in the next couple of days. And the NFL, Greg, has gone all in on vaccinations. First off, they are requiring Tier 1 staff, which would be the people in closest contact with the players, which would be coaches, equipment managers, essentially people who are in the same room as the players day to day. They must be vaccinated. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they have every right to do that. Being employed by the NFL is not a right, it's a privilege. Players cannot force to be vaccinated. They cannot say you can't play if you're not vaccinated. But the NFL also announced, and this is an agreement, they had to negotiate this with the Players Association, that if a COVID-19 outbreak prevented a game from being played, the game would be forfeited. Both teams would lose their game checks for that week, because that's essentially how NFL salaries are paid out. They are just paid through the season, and they get paid after every game. They get paid through an NFL season. That's it. And if the game is canceled, and they're not going to bend over backwards to try and reschedule like they did last year, but neither team has a bye week that jives, it's a forfeit. Both sides will not get paid. And it's treated in the playoff race. It's going to be treated as a win and a loss.
Let me stop you right there, Al, just for clarification. Does that mean that both teams get an L?
No, just the team that caused the forfeit.
What if neither team has?
That I would not. I have no idea, to be honest with you, how much further we go by that.
Okay.
But then it goes even further. Unvaccinated players, Greg, will be heavily restricted in their activities. Pretty much, they're going to go through the same things everybody did last season. Daily testing, will have to wear a mask. They have to quarantine. If they don't have COVID and they are through contract tracing associated with someone, they are on the COVID list. They have to social distance from the rest of the team for much of the time they are there. They can only spend a certain amount of time in the same room with players, things like that. Essentially, it's two different classes of players. The vaccinated, which can essentially go about their lives in a normal manner, and the unvaccinated, which are essentially going to put their team at a competitive disadvantage. Today, for example, Ron Rivera, head coach of the Washington football team, told the media he was extremely disappointed. I think he might use stronger verbiage than that his team was, I believe, under 50% vaccinated. And as I said, they're getting ready to start training camps. And Ron Rivera, for those who don't remember or don't know, is immunocompromised because he is a cancer survivor. He coached last year while being treated for cancer while he was getting treatment. And he is still in an immune-compromised state. And like I said, when he talks to his players, he wears a mask. He takes all the proper precautions as someone in his position will. So, Greg, he's got players on his team that apparently do not give two shits about the health of their coach, and that their coach is highly at risk of dying from COVID. Rivera brought up, he's extremely concerned about the Delta variant, which is really causing all the problems right now, the mutated virus. And he said, we don't know what's going to happen here. And he's very concerned. And he's got players that apparently don't give two shits about their head coach. We saw in Minnesota where they are going to, apparently it looks like they're going to fire, I believe, an offensive line coach who refused to get vaccinated. And going to the college ranks, the head coach of Washington State, let me bring his name up here. Nick Rolovich. He won't say why he's refusing to get vaccinated. He has said he is just not getting vaccinated. He's using the quote unquote, it's a personal choice quote. And that is despite Washington State faculty and employees have to be vaccinated in order to be employed by the university. So he's putting his team at a competitive disadvantage. In a place like Washington State, in a fairly liberal area, liberal college, there's already calls for them just to say, this is too much trouble, we're just going to fire him. Let's just get rid of this guy. It's not worth the trouble. And that's where I think we're headed, Greg. I think we're going to see some teams make decisions based on their vaccination status. Because what would you do, say, if you're the Detroit Lions and you have a backup cornerback who refuses to get vaccinated, and his participation in drills and meetings is going to have to be limited, or he's going to have to be treated specially. He's going to have to be treated differently, I should say, compared to his vaccinated teammates. When you could pick up a guy on the waiver wire who is vaccinated, you will not have to make special exceptions for, and you won't have to worry about it again. People are going to lose their jobs, and I am all for it. I'm out of sympathy for people using this. It's a personal choice excuse. When they say it's a personal choice, it's political. They're probably right-wing crazed Republicans or QAnons or what the hell ever, and they are. You're not going to change their minds at this point, Greg. I think we see that every day in our everyday lives. There is people who are either so afraid of being wrong or are just so out of their minds politically that they are going to refuse no matter what when it comes to the vaccine. So I can see people losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods over this, because why would a team want to deal with this? It's something I'll just pick up a vaccinated guy on the waiver wire, call it a day. So this is going to get really interesting really quick with training camp opening in the NFL.
Well, the only thing that I think, Al, that's really going to work with these people who are opposing or refusing to get the vaccine, it's clear that all efforts up to this point have really not worked with these people. Yeah. The only thing I think that's going to really resonate and cause some behavioral change, and even and even this, what I'm about to say is not going to be maybe necessarily something that's going to happen overnight.
Right.
But I think is kind of related to what you're talking about with these players who, when you said, well, I'll just get a guy off the waiver wire who is vaccinated and so forth, is to deny people things. I mean, if for example, if unvaccinated people can't do A, B, or C. Unvaccinated people can't, do this or that. That's because that's what I see a lot of what people are been out of shape about are lockdowns and I can't go to the bar. I can't do this. I can't do that. That is now. Before it was just they're bitching and moaning about it, but they could still go.
Right.
So I don't know why they were even bitching about it because they were going to break the rules anyway. But if you institute some sort of some mandates that say, okay, look, you can come in, you can't. That's the only thing. Now it's going to cause. I know that I understand that's going to cause a lot of confrontations and a lot of stuff. I get it, but on the other hand, the more people realize that, geez, I really want to do these things, and I can't do these things because I'm not vaccinated. That might get people to change their behavior a little bit. Clearly, preaching. Informing,
common sense. No,
common sense. None of that has worked for some people, and even what I'm suggesting isn't going to work with some people either.
Right.
But I just don't see any other way than to start denying these folks some of the niceties of life.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I mean, it's not like, and this would hardly be a knee-jerk, no pun intended, response. I mean, we've given these folks a lot of time to come around, and so it's not like this is the first cause of action here. Is to make these kind of draconian, if you will, rules. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and it's not as easy as I'm making it out to be. I understand that, but the premise is the same, which is that unvaccinated people are just going to have to be denied certain things. Privileges privileges. That's the only thing I think that's going to wake them up. Now, they may still bitch and they may still try to get around those efforts as well, all in the name of not getting vaccinated. But I just don't see any other. That's really the only thing that hasn't been tried yet. I know it's been talked about, vaccine passports and so forth. But I'm not even talking about international travel. I'm talking about just regular things. But it's difficult, I know, to enforce that, maybe. But I have my vaccination card. I'm sure you do too. And
sure do.
I'll be happy to carry that sucker around with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I'll wear it with a lanyard on me if I have to.
Yeah.
Now, what do I care?
Yeah.
I mean, if I have to flash like anything else to get in places, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So, I just don't see how. So I think back to this NFL thing. I just think that while, like you said, they can't force players to get vaccinated, you can still do maybe the next best thing, which is, like you said, these forfeits and maybe certain players who are on the bubble. The interesting thing, Al, will be when star players refuse to get to that. For example, I just saw Dak Prescott the other day be very coy in answering the question about whether he'd been vaccinated. He played the old, it's a personal question. Whenever somebody said that, they weren't vaccinated.
Right, exactly.
Because why would you be coy if you were vaccinated?
Right.
So when star players don't get vaccinated, it'd be interesting to see how that's handled. Because if you don't have those kinds of players on board, it makes it even more difficult. And I think, I'm not sure, I can't remember if you mentioned it before we recorded or at the top of your discussion about Taylor Decker of the Lions. Had come out a few months ago. Right. And said he was not, at that time, was not vaccinated. Whether he is now, I don't know. But there's going to be players of starting ilk of on every roster who's going to take this stance. So we'll see. It's the only thing that's I'm with you. I don't have any sympathy for any, or even empathy, frankly, for any of these people for the consequences of their actions. I mean, I just And it's so funny to me to hear people talk about my body, my choice. The very same people who are probably against abortion are saying the same thing. So
yeah, and you're right. You really are right. It's going to be curious when it's one thing when a backup or a
bubble player,
isn't vaccinated, and the team deems that player easily replaceable. But when you're talking about a star player, that's then again they're treated differently anyway in every sport. But you got to wonder how long a team's going to put up with it, especially because we're already being warned that once fall arrives, they are expecting an uptick in cases. As we saw last year, because people won't be outside, they'll be indoors more. No, the drill because we went through it last year. So there's going to be schisms formed in locker rooms. There's probably going to be more cliques, I should say, formed in locker rooms between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And I just can't wait to see what happens when a game gets canceled and people don't get paid. That's when shit's going to hit the fan. I think that's when it's in the end, Greg, I think that's what it really is. To change people's behavior, I think oftentimes it has to hit them in the pocketbook.
Right.
And it's one thing for, say, a Dak Prescott, for example, to miss one game check when he's making, $50 million a year or whatever. It's another for an undrafted free agent rookie making the league minimum and missing a paycheck. That's a huge big percentage. That's a huge chunk of their yearly salary compared to Prescott's. So, there's going to be some interesting situations. And the other thing you brought up, I think a lot of people confuse the difference between rights and privilege. That's my right to have this job. No, it's not. It's a privilege. And the other thing is it's against my rights for them to fire me because of this. No, it's not, because they're a private entity. They're not the government. A business can decide how they want to run their business, and unvaccinated is not the same as being as race, creed, color, religion. So we'll see people lose their jobs because they are so dead set against getting vaccinated. It's just
they have
exactly. It's already started, and we're seeing it in like hospitals are requiring all employees to be vaccinated in order to work there, and I have no problem with that. We're seeing it in colleges as well, universities, where they're requiring, as I mentioned earlier, where Washington State's head coach refuses to get vaccinated. But when that's going to come to a head. So it's, I guess it's just frustrating because there's so much of this could have been prevented if people would just. I guess the best analogy would be if people had the same attitudes in the 40s and 50s that they do now, we'd still have iron lungs in use. And we'd still have people. We'd have people going around with leg braces on because of polio and smallpox and the like. So I don't know. It's just so frustrating to see people who you would think are educated. I mean, most NFL players, they I would say most. I say 99.9% of NFL players all at least attended college, and a majority of them graduated. You would think they would be a little more open to keeping themselves and society safe, but apparently not. And it's just so exhausting. And obviously, someone more than one. Linda is a nurse, and I have a niece who is an ER nurse as well, and they are at their wits' end at this point because, as I told you before we started recording, when COVID patients at this point, they're all unvaccinated. Damn near every single one of them. It could have been so easily avoided. Instead, they're in the hospital, and then they're begging for help.
Right.
When, if they had just gotten vaccinated a few months ago, they could have went about their lives relatively normally, but because they are so pig-headed, stubborn, crazy, they're putting their lives at risk. I have so much trouble wrapping my head around that. I just can't at this point.
Right.
But all right, with that off our chest, let's get on to a little better topic, or a little more pleasant topic. Why don't we talk a little Red Wings? Because so much happened with this, Greg. When I put together the show notes, all I could do was make a list of all the moves Steve Yzerman has made over the past 2 weeks or so. and that's a long one. As he's been one busy man. He's they've had the expansion draft. He has signed free agents. He has made trades. He's gone through the draft where he made more trades, and he's continuing to sign or at least lock down some of the young players. So I guess we can probably start with the expansion draft, because there was a lot of controversy as to who the Wings would end up exposing. And the two names that ultimately caused, I think, the most consternation were Troy Stecher and Dennis Cholowski. Stecher because he is essentially a top 4 defenseman for the Wings, and Cholowski because he was a first-round draft pick from, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. But he's really yet to make his really stick in with the Red Wings. And ultimately, when the Seattle Kraken came around to make their selection to take a player from the Red Wings, they did take Cholowski. He was selected by Seattle, and he is now a Kraken. And honestly, Stetcher's a better player at this point, but Stecher is older. I think he's only under contract for 1 more year. I think Stetcher's like 27, 28, something like that. And obviously he's making more money than Cholowski, but he's a better player right now, will help the Wings right now. And I'm not sold that Cholowski will ever be a good player at this point anyway. He was drafted at 18. He's probably, 22, 23 at this point, and he's yet to be able to stick in the NHL. So, but that happens every time there's an expansion draft, Greg, that fans get all up in arms over, oh my God, we left this guy unprotected, and oh, we could lose this guy. In the end, the vast majority of the time, you ultimately don't miss that player because they were left unprotected for a reason. And right. Cholowski has yet to prove he is a NHL defenseman, and he may never be. But he also could end up being a poster boy for a change of scenery, because he was right. Because he was a draft pick of the previous regime. He's not a Yzerman kid, so who knows how it'll work out. But I was like, okay, he's gone, and plus Yzerman made some moves to mitigate that anyway, which we'll go into. So. I wasn't upset either way. They lost a player. It was going to happen. Happened to be this kid. Everybody moves out for their lives.
It's fascinating to watch Yzerman work. I mean, we saw it from a kind of afar, Al, when he was with Tampa. Yeah. We knew he was doing a good job. Clearly, I mean, the results were in the win and loss column. Yeah. But we weren't really there. We weren't really up close seeing it really on a day-to-day basis, how he was building that team. And, you just knew that you knew that he was doing it. You just didn't really necessarily know how he was doing it. And now that he's been the GM now for over a couple of years here in Detroit, now we're really starting to see, now that he's finally sinking his meat hooks into this organization, you're really starting to see how his mind works and how he is able to. It's like watching. I know this has been an overused analogy, but it's like watching a guy play chess. Yeah, I mean, it's just everything's done deliberately. There's no nothing's done in any sort of reckless fashion. He doesn't do things and then have to do something else to cover for the other thing he just did. He just seems to have this ability to. He knows what he wants to do, and he just does it. And Cholowski, frankly, I wish him well. He's going to a scenario where he's, going to play for an expansion team. Hopefully, that gives him an opportunity. Yeah, he may still, like you said, be one of those change of scenery guys. He's still young, so it's still too early to say he's done for. He did play almost 60 games a couple years ago, so he has some staying power in the NHL. He just didn't. At least not so far, has become.
But the fact that he couldn't stick in a lineup with the worst team in the league, I think says
true.
A lot.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But on the other hand, like you said, people go different places and find their way. And sometimes when you have that burden of being a number one pick and it doesn't really pan out, maybe going somewhere else is the best thing, where you're not known as that. You're known as just another one of these expansion players. So that might help him out. But it's just the way that Yzerman makes these moves. It just what I'm saying is there just seems to be a reason for every move. There's something behind every move.
Yep.
It's not sometimes, we've seen a lot of GMs in this town that make these moves, and you don't know if it's done to make a splash or for the sake of making a move or on impulse, and then another move has to be made to kind of correct that impulse move. And it just, Bob Quinn is a good example. And you end up, spinning your wheels in the mud. But with Yzerman, it just seems like now that we're really getting a chance to see how he works up close, the money he gives out, the length of term he gives out or doesn't give out, maybe in some cases, it's all part of the plan. I mean, it's all part of this master plan that he has, and he fleeced. I mean, the folks in Carolina are ready to.
Yeah. Before you bring that up, why don't we just tell what the trade was?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
That they picked up. This is before the draft. Yeah. They picked up goalie Alex Najovic from Carolina for the rights to free agent goalie Jonathan Bernier and a third-round draft pick in the 2021 draft. And the Carolina goalie actually, I believe, ended up essentially he shows all the signs of being a long-term starting goalie in the NHL, but he's still young. I think he's like 23, which is young for a goalie. Goalies do tend to bloom later in their careers, and then their careers seem to last forever if they're any good. But I guess Carolina has some money issues with the cap. They were worried how much he was going to cost. I believe he was going to be a restricted free agent or like that. So they weren't sure where they were going to go, and there are some free agent goalies because they're in a win now mode in Carolina. So they still have a few question marks about a goalie because, as we both know, Greg, goalies are voodoo, and we'll kind of talk about that over the draft as well. You just always know with them. But when given the opportunity, this kid took it and ran with it and carried Carolina to the playoffs and actually played very well in the playoffs until they were knocked out. So I'm sure you're going to. Steve Yzerman essentially ripped this kid off from Carolina because Carolina, and this is what this seems to be a trend with Yzerman's trades, is that he looks for vulnerable teams, and then he just wipes them out.
Well, that's what I was going to say next was that part of being a good GM isn't just knowing what you need and trying to get it. Yeah. It's knowing how to get it and who to get it from. Yeah. And you mentioned seeing a vulnerability, and that's exactly what he did. He knew exactly what Carolina's situation was. Bernier is 7 years older now. He did a great job.
Yeah, Bernier's a good goalie.
He did a great job for the Red Wings, but let's face it, the Red Wings Bernier isn't going to make or break this team in the future. He got I think the goalie that they got out, I think he's 25. You might want to double check it. I think he's 25.
I know but he's not old.
He's not. He's not old.
In goalie years, 25 is young.
Yes.
Very young.
And his metrics were very good. Yes. He even started, I think, like 9 games in the playoffs for a very good team, actually. Yes. And by all measurements, he did quite well. And the fans in Carolina are just
they were livid. They were livid.
I didn't know there were hockey fans in Carolina. Yeah. The ones that they do have are very upset about this trade. And as good as that trade, everybody in the league just completely marveled at the trade for the Red Wings. Now, even as good as that, this is what I mean about Yzerman. As good as that trade was for him and for the Red Wings, he was still with that, shucks, I wish I didn't have to trade a third-round draft pick. He's still kind of, I hated to do it. Yeah. What are you talking about? This is a great trade.
Yeah, I remember there was a whole article, I think, in their free press about Yzerman talking about how he hates to trade any of his draft picks.
And I understand that, but my gosh, and you mentioned this kid could be somebody that the Red Wings might lock up. He's ecstatic about being here. He's been around the area.
From, Windsor or something like that.
He played in Plymouth. I mean, he loves the area. Right. Yeah. And he's got family here. I mean, whole 9 yards. So, I mean, he
actually ended up taking a slight pay cut. He took less than what I think Carolina was going to offer him to come here. I think it ended up at $3 million a year for 2 years, and Carolina was like at 3.5 or something like that.
Yeah, so he could be, like you said, a long-term solution.
Yes, exactly. He could be going for the next 10, 15 years.
Right, which Bernier was not going to be.
Right.
But good for Bernier, because he goes to a team now that, even though I know the fans aren't happy about this, but he goes to a team, Bernier does, who is better than the Red Wings, let's face it, and has a better chance of winning sooner rather than later, and he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, for the two goalies, I think this works out great.
That's right.
Really does.
So it does. I know he was happy to be here, Bernier, but, again, so there was that trade, and it just...
Well, why don't we talk
and
about
once again, these, and the other thing, too, there's no leaks out of
you're right.
Nobody ever sees any of these moves coming. Nothing's ever talked about. Nobody ever. The beat writers have no clue. Nobody writes. Well, the Red Wings are talking to Carolina about.
Right.
It's never. They never know about it until it's announced. I mean, it's amazing. So I just runs a tight ship, and he knows exactly what he wants to do, and it's just fascinating to see him work up close like this after having seen it kind of from afar when he was in Tampa.
Yeah. And speaking of trades, we need to talk about. This is one of the reasons why I don't think the Wings were too upset over losing a defenseman in the expansion draft, is because they also traded with the Islanders, and they got defenseman Nick Leddy in exchange for Richard Panik, who they picked up in the Mantha trade and really didn't have a role here, or at least not a long-term role, and a second-round pick in this draft. And Leddy's a top 4 defenseman. And he played. Leddy played. No, he's in his late 20s. Maybe he's 29. But he is. Leddy is a top 4 defenseman on a very good Islanders team that went fairly deep into the playoffs and played a ton of minutes. I mean, Leddy is automatically, at least the way this team is set up, he might be on your first pair next year. But he is that solid. He's on the last year of his deal. And I know fans were like, why did we give up a second-round pick? Why did we throw in a pick? Because Leddy is obviously on the final year of his deal, and he could be flipped, hopefully for a better draft pick if he has a good year for the Red Wings, to a playoff team. So this is another deal where I don't think there's hardly any downside to it. Because, one, the Wings had a crap ton of draft picks in this draft, which the reason you accumulate draft picks is not only to make draft selections, but also to use them to get legitimate players. You package up draft picks to help get you better players, and that's what this did. Leddy is a solid veteran NHL defenseman, something the Wings and you can tell by Yzerman's drafts and the moves he's made, he is building from the blue line. He's drafting defensemen. He just signed a goalie. He's going to, he traded for a goalie. He just drafted a goalie. He is building on the defensive side of the ice, and this is just another sign of that. And a guy like Leddy buys him some time to let some of these young defensemen who are going to be in the minor league system to develop and go from there. And as I said, he could be flipped for a draft pick of equal or better value. He's a solid player. So once again, this is Yzerman. Sometimes I feel like he's playing 4D chess against the rest of the NHL.
Right. And the other thing too, Al, is that the defense did make some market improvements. This past season over the year prior, and that's trending in the right direction. Leddy is a good solid NHL defenseman, and you mentioned Mantha, and that was the other thing too. And we talked about this when he traded Mantha, is that trading a guy like that's another thing. It's one thing to package some picks and get a guy, or trade like a Richard Panik and get Leddy. But when you trade a Mantha, who, let's face it, was, on the top line for a time, that shows a little bit of chutzpah as well. To say, I'm going to cut bait on this kid. And even though Mantha went to Washington and played very well, at least initially, when his first few games, he was scoring goals left and right. It was just a move that was like, look, we've tried everything we can think of to get this guy to be consistent in terms of his effort, and it's just not happening. So off you go. And those are the things too. So it's really fun to see him, put this together.
Yeah.
You mentioned, building on the, with Moritz Seider, who's coming in, probably going to play next year at the NHL level.
Right.
Also on defense, Nick Leddy says, I'm eager to be a mentor if I can to a guy like Seider. And then re-upping with who was the guy that
Mark Stahl.
Stahl.
Yeah, who people were like, why did they trade for him? And he ended up having a halfway decent year.
Everybody
on
says,
defense, and they signed him for a cheap veteran deal again. So
no, they're all saying, this is a great organization, and there's still
original 6 team.
There's still an aura about the Red Wings, even though they haven't been champions for quite some time now. There's still, whenever you win 4 cups in 11 years, that still has some cash. There's still an aura about the organization. You've got a legend who's the GM.
Yep.
You've still got
an original 6 team, which say what you will, that always means something.
And for so long, even when they weren't winning Stanley Cups, they were so good. I mean, for that long period of time, the 20 years where they were just outstanding. So, that's still, even though those years are getting further in the rearview mirror, they still carry some weight. There's still, you look at look who's around the organization right now: Yzerman, Kronwall, Verbeek, Yuri Fisher, Chris Draper. I mean, they're all still working for the organization in some way, shape. Mark Howe. In some way, shape, or form. And when you see those kinds of people in the building, I remember Mike Babcock was talking about how the late Ted Lindsay would stop by the locker room whenever he wanted to, essentially, and he would just go in the coach's room after a game when Ted didn't think the team played all that well. He just tell Babcock, he would just, tell it like it was.
Yeah, I could honestly see that for a guy like Lindsay.
And I remember really Babcock saying when Babcock left here, and I remember he said, one of the things that I'm going to miss is just being around this building and just seeing all these Red Wings from the past and present fill this building. There's so many great names around this organization that are still with us, that are still there. And so you've got, there's a lot of lore there, and that is, and you combine that with the fact that the team is trending upward in terms of the rebuild. That's a powerful tonic for a lot of folks who want to maybe reestablish their careers. I know that's what Stahl said. He said, there's no question when I came over here, it improved my game, and I got better. I was getting a little stagnant where I was, and I'm thrilled to it was a no-brainer for me to re-sign.
Yeah, and it does say volumes as the Wing as an organization that they don't. The stuff we saw happening in Tampa with Yzerman seems to be carrying over here in Detroit as well. Where you saw guys who are willing to take maybe a little less money to play for them because of, whatever voodoo Yzerman has. Plus, you said there's a status of playing for a guy like Yzerman, and who knows if it's going to work out as well as it did for Tampa. I know who just won their second Stanley Cup in a row, but I feel confident with the moves the Wings are making. Like, let's talk a little bit about the draft. In the draft, Yzerman was fairly aggressive. At 6th overall, he took a young defenseman from Sweden, and bless he was a 18-year-old was playing in the men's league, Simon Edvinsson. I guess he's a guy who was really talked up by what's that big time Wings scout out in Europe, was it Anderson, I believe his name was?
Håkan Anderson.
Håkan Anderson, who I guess was really sold on him. So they took him, I think, a little higher, much like Seider. Then I think Edvinsson was probably expected to go in the around 10, high teens, something like that. Wings took him at 6, so that says something. With the Wings see something in him, they just go for it. And in a surprise, because obviously everybody who's a Wings fan knows there are, at least before the trade of Carolina, there are no goalies in the pipeline. There's one weakness with the Wings organization. Yeah. There's no goalie. There's no young goalies, I should say. And with Wings actually traded up from 23 to 15, giving up, I believe, a second and a 5th round pick, and they took goalie Sebastian Kosa, I believe it is. I believe he played in I believe in Canadian juniors last year. I think they said he's 6'6". He's huge. I guess he's an athletic freak, and he. There was 2 goalies that were thought to go in the first round, and they thought Kosa would be the second of the 2 goalies. But the Wings didn't think he was going to last. This is the guy they wanted, and he's only 18, so they got, especially now with the trades they made, which kind of solidifies the goalie position for a few years at the big league level, that they took Kosa, and now they can give him time to develop. And there's no need to rush him right away. At 18, a goalie at 18, they're just a baby, because as we said, goalies don't hit their stride till their mid-late 20s for the most part. But the thing about him, though, is he's huge, which is, I think, more and more we're seeing teams wanting big goalies. I think what they said about him is when he butterflies, his shoulders are still at the crossbar height. He's that big, and I guess he's just he's not the most skilled goalie yet. He's still trying to learn the position, but they're saying he's just an athletic freak at the position, and that's a position where you will often see not as athletic of players, but that's how the NHL is going. They want big athletic goalies nowadays, and he fits where the league is going. And the Wings didn't think it was going to be there, so they traded up and took him. Which again, that's why you have all that draft capital, which allows you to make moves like that.
Exactly.
And other than that, there is also they re-signed Michael Rasmussen to 3-year contract. They re-signed Gustav Lidstrom to a 2-year deal. And there's also I think there was there's rumors going around. I wanted to ask you about this. That there are rumors that there are teams interested in Bertuzzi. Do you think the Wings would be interested in? Because remember, this was their top line of Mantha, Bertuzzi, and Larkin. They've traded Mantha. Now there's talk. There's interest in Bertuzzi, and the Wings are at least open to talking about it. Do you see the Wings trading Bertuzzi?
No, I don't. I don't. I think that he's a piece. Now, that doesn't mean that if something crazy came along that Yzerman would do that, but I don't think that they would do that. I think that he's a building block. I think he's a guy that if he can stay healthy, is a big part of what the Red Wings are all about. I like him. Not that means anything, but I think that he is a keeper.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about Dylan Larkin, and I know I've said this before, and I wrote a column about it as well. I just don't know what this kid is. I can't get my hands on. I know it sounds crazy because he's the captain, but I can't figure it out. Mm-hmm. I don't know, if that 32-goal season a couple of years ago was a fluke.
If that's the outlier,
or what is he? What is he?
Right.
I'm more concerned about him than I am Bertuzzi, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Larkin and he got hurt too, and we'll see how that goes, Larkin. But no, I don't see either of those.
I would say my one concern of Tyler Bertuzzi is that he's coming off back surgery.
Right.
That is.
Well, yeah.
That's the one thing I would be concerned about is that how does he recover from back surgery, and if you are concerned about that being a recurring issue for the rest of his career, maybe you kind of try and sell high on him right now. I think that might be what's being played into it.
That might be one. That might be the only reason that they might consider doing something like that.
Because he does tick all the boxes what you want in he's physical and he scores, and that's a hard mixture to get in today's NHL.
The Red Wings haven't had a player like that in a long time. But the other thing too, Al, is that if you did trade him under such circumstances, what you just said about the back thing, well, then what are you going to get back from?
Right. Yeah.
I would just kind of hold on to him, and he only played 9 games last year, which was disappointing. He was off to a good start too, 5 goals, 2 assists in 9 games. This is a guy, 21 goals, 2 years in a row. Physical presence without taking a lot of stupid penalties, goes in the corners, does the grunt work. A really good line mate for a guy like Larkin. And maybe frankly, part of Larkin's issue was he didn't have Bertuzzi.
right.
for all, just about the whole year, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that was part of it as well. But I'm concerned about Larkin's career trajectory right now. I really think, Al, that this year coming up, and I might be the only. I feel like I'm the only one who's saying it because nobody else is saying it. I feel like this is a really big year for him.
Yeah,
individually, I really do. I mean, I really think not just because of the health thing. I really think he's got to go out there and really establish himself. Anybody can be named captain. I mean, good for him, but he's really got to go out there and establish himself.
Right.
And the team's getting better now. The games are going to be a little bit more important now. It's one thing to be a captain of a team that's 50 points out of the playoffs, and another thing to be a captain of a team that's in the hunt. And I just, there's a lot of big shoes to fill in Detroit when it comes to hockey captain. So I'm a little concerned about that. Now, having said all that, I was all for him being captain. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we both.
There really wasn't anybody else that I would have chosen, but I just really think this is a big year for him. I'll give him a little bit of a pass initially because he is coming off an injury that is supposed to maybe drag into next season. But he's got to start to me. I just don't want him to go the Justin Abdicator route. That's what I'm scared of.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the one thing that Larkin does have going for him as well is that if there's the only position, obviously we said how weak they are at goal, in goal, I should say. I think the one position in the team that's not that much better at either on the at the NHL level or in the minor leagues is center. The Wings really are bereft of talent at center once you get past Larkin. There's not a lot there right now, and that was one of the. If there was one thing that the fans did not like about this draft, was that Yzerman can essentially concentrated at the top of the draft, first and second round. He selected his top three players were all on the defensive side of the ice, two big defensemen and the goalie, and he didn't because the Wings, as we both know, Greg. Asking them to score, watching them score goals is like pulling teeth. It's painful to watch because they are so limited offensively.
Right.
So the fan base was hoping for them to get a high-level center or two in this draft. They didn't really go that direction until like late in the second and into the third round, so we'll have to see how that pans out. So the Wings may be doing some free agent shopping for some offensive talent, but these moves, once again, all of these moves, when you put them together, between the veterans getting one-year deals, the trades that he's making for young players, how he's handling the draft, this really, again, shows just how much leeway and Yzerman has with the Wings roster, and that he is he knows this is not going to be a quick and short rebuild. This is going to take some time. And a lot of these moves aren't really going to pay off, especially with the draft picks. None of these guys project to be an NHL player in the next year or two. I mean, the draft picks he's making right now won't be. If things work out perfectly, these kids won't be in the lineup for another 2 or 3 years, the way it's looking. So I think all these moves are showing just how confident Yzerman is that this is going to be a long-term burn rather than a short, quick flash. And all these moves point in that direction that, if the Wings are going to be a playoff team, it's not going to be for at least a couple more years the way it's looking.
Well, Al, it's not just let's just make the playoffs and let's it's about being very good for a very long time, and that's what the Lightning were. Yeah. I mean, this team that won this Lightning team that won the last 2 Stanley Cups was essentially, a lot of it was still put together by Yzerman.
Yes,
even though he left the team in 2018, I mean, it was still largely guys that he built and the coach that he hired, the whole 9 yards. So, it's about being good for a very long time, and that's what he's. That's why it's so meticulous, and that's why it's so.
I think that's a good term of a phrase. He's meticulous in how he's building.
And I know that frustrates people sometimes, and now free agency's coming up, and it's going to be done on his timetable and nobody else's, and that's the way it should be. But not a lot of GMs, Al, of course, are as comfortable in their own skin as he is.
Right.
And, you know, I'm really actually kind of glad it worked out this way, that he went to another team first and kind of sharpened his skills and then came to Detroit. I don't know if he would have had, I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't have, but I don't know if he would have had the same success. Frankly, when he was ready to become a GM was right when the Red Wings were starting to be on the wrong side of the coin when it comes to age and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that had he, let's just say they made him the GM. Let's say he was going to go to Tampa and they said, oh, well, hold on, we'll make you the GM. I don't know that would have worked out. I'm kind of glad that it worked out this way, as much as it was hard to see him go and have all that success with Tampa. But now he comes here as a absolutely seasoned, one of the best managers in the league. And that's not me talking. Those are polls and surveys taken throughout the league. So I think that he came to the organization at the right time. Yeah. And he left the Tampa organization for him at the right time. Mm-hmm. And just it seemed to all work out the way it should have worked out. Yeah,
I think a term I would use of Yzerman at this point, he's ruthless when it comes to what he does. He doesn't have a lot of I think it worked out great because he went to Tampa, had no ties there of any of the players.
Right. No.
And so I'm sure that made it easier for him to make some of those. He made some pretty ruthless moves when he came to Tampa that some of the fans were not happy about with some of their veterans.
That whole thing with St. Louis, for example.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the big one right there. And now he left Detroit, saw what he needs to do. Then when he comes back, most of the players that were on the roster when he was still in the Detroit front office are gone at this point. So now he has no ties to most of these players. Like he has no ties to like a lot of the draft picks, like Cholowski, for example. And that it makes it easier to do what you have to do to improve the team. And sometimes that means you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet, as they say. And that's what he's doing right now. He's and plus what's also helping is now a couple years in, the contracts are starting to fall off the salary cap. There's only one horrendous one left at this point, and that would be Franz Nielsen's. I think there's only 1 year left of that one. And at this point, Nielsen is just taking up a roster spot, and there's no reason to buy him out because he'll be gone in a year anyway. So that's also helping, is that the nature of things, of how contracts, as long as you don't replace them with bad ones, and Yzerman has not done that, he's now starting to get significant amounts of cap space, and it's freeing him up to do different things. And, again, he's just showing how good of a GM he is. I'm shocked at how good he is. I never saw this coming, that he would be considered the model GM in the NHL.
Well, he was always a speak softly, carry big stick kind of a person all the way through his playoff.
He was never a rah-rah guy, but when he spoke, people
and he wasn't the type to make a lot of locker room speeches, of course, but when he did make some, that really resonated, and the players really responded. I don't know if this surprises me or not, frankly. I don't know that I would say that I'm surprised by his success. I think that
I'd be surprised that he's this good.
Well, I mean, he obviously learned a lot by observing Kenny Holland and Jimmy DeVolano and other people in their organization when he was here, Jimmy Nill. Mm-hmm. And he just seems like he's the kind of guy that probably took a little bit of each person and kind of combined it with his own thing and just kind of made an amalgam. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is I don't think he was like destined to be a great GM necessarily, but I think that he, in those days after he retired, between that and going to Tampa, which was about 4 or 5 years, I think he just soaked it all up. And you mentioned it about he went to an organization. I remember writing at the time, I said, this Tampa thing is absolutely beneath him. But I also said he should take it because he's never going to be a GM in Detroit. He's got to be a GM somewhere, and he's going to this Mickey Mouse franchise, I said. Mm-hmm. But so he really beneath him. But he did it, and he like you said, no connection to anybody down there. And nobody, you couldn't, they were not relevant whatsoever when he took them over, and quickly became very relevant. And I think the success begets success. I think once you get more confident in yourself, just like if you're confident as a player, I think he became more confident as a general manager.
Yeah.
And not that he thinks that he's got a Midas touch necessarily. Everything he touches is going to turn to gold. I think if you were to pin him down and give him some truth serum, he would tell you that I'm pretty confident that the moves I make are more often than not going to pan out. I was looking back at that St. Louis situation, and he fleeced the Rangers.
Yeah.
For the Rangers to take St. Louis, and St. Louis was 1,000,000 years old. And he's still got a lot of assets back for him. So he's been doing this for a long time.
The Wings are lucky that they were able to get him back. I wouldn't say lucky. I mean, I guess how it all kind of worked out. He was ready to come back, and the Wings were finally ready to move on from Ken Holland, and the timing somehow amazingly worked out. He's making the decisions that we wished Ken Holland would have made 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Right.
And we've gone on and on about that. They kept that streak going for too damn long, and that's why they're part of the reasons they're in the positions they are now. But at least now the contracts are falling off. They have a very capable general manager seemingly making some pretty darn smart decisions, and things are looking up, even though this is still, we have to remember, not a good team yet, because as we both mentioned, they're going to lose a lot of 2-0 games, the way it looks, the way this roster is being set up. But still, things are looking up. Where I would normally answer another birthday game question, but since I'm so brilliant and already answered that in the first question, we'll move on to what's going on in the NCAA. Texas and Oklahoma have left the Big 12, Greg. They applied for SEC membership today. All hell is breaking loose in NCAA, at least on the college football side of things. It's all about money. It's all about football. It doesn't make a difference if you're a good basketball school. It doesn't make a difference if you're a smaller school with a good football team. If you don't move the needle as a blue blood, if you don't have a national brand, you're not going to fit into where things are going in this new world order of college sports. The Big 12, without Texas and Oklahoma, Greg, that becomes a mid-major conference. It becomes essentially the group of 6, which is the MAC, which you're a fan of, is a member of. It becomes the group of 7, with the top dog being whatever's left of the Big 12, even though now there's talk that they may try to salvage things up with the AAC, which is actually, if you look back, built up of a mishmash of old Big East teams, which is how bizarre all this realignment has been. What's interesting about all this, Greg, is just the money that we are talking about here. The Pac-12 and the Big Ten have said they're not interested in the 8 remaining teams of the Big 12, which are talking teams like Baylor, TCU, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, decent-sized schools, big state schools, but they're saying, no, you guys don't move the needle. We're not interested. Essentially, what it comes down to, Greg, with these moves, is say with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, is that right now, for example, Big Ten teams, I believe, get $55 million a year from their TV contract, which, between Fox and ESPN and that, I don't even think that's factoring into what's going on with the Big Ten Network, which is a cash cow. But okay, say they're getting $55 million a year. The factor is they don't want to bring in another school that wouldn't add to that $55 million a year. Essentially, if say they bring in, people say, why don't you just bring in Kansas and Iowa State? They fit the footprint. They got built-in rivalries. Kansas is a basketball blue blood. The problem is you bring in Kansas and Iowa State, tiny media markets. The Big Ten already has Iowa because they got the big dog in Iowa in the University of Iowa. The next when the contracts come up in the Big Ten, their next TV contract comes up in 2023. Is Fox or ESPN going to say, yeah, we're going to give you an extra, who knows how much because you've got Iowa State? No, they're going to say that, which essentially means they add teams. Their sections of the pie get smaller because the pie itself does not get bigger. And that's what's going on here. If you don't help a conference make a pie bigger, all you're doing, if you get these teams, is that you're making the slices of the pie smaller. And the schools, I think, have finally realized that, why should we do this? It's really become every man for themselves. And if you aren't one of the blue bloods at this point, or tied to a blue blood, like say Michigan State, there's Michigan and Michigan State, but they're so intertwined that they're together essentially. You're kind of in shit creek right now, the way things are looking, and it's just fascinating to watch because the money they're talking about, and there's also this talk of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 specifically. They're part of an organization called the AAU, the Association of American Universities, which rakes in billions and billions and billions of dollars in research money from private entities and the U.S. government. And that's another problem with a lot of these schools we're talking about. They aren't AAU accredited, which means they don't help in the academic side, which, amazing. We're talking about academics for once when it comes to college sports. So it's just ugly to see what's going on here, though, that I guess we should have seen it coming. And this has been coming for 40 years with what's going on in college sports. Once the doors open, because remember when we grew up, Greg, we were lucky to see a blue blood like Michigan or Ohio State, Michigan, any of the big teams in the Big Ten. We were lucky to see them on TV, maybe twice a year when we were kids. Michigan, you'd always see Michigan, Ohio State on the game, but there was only like one or two games on televised per day. Now, since the floodgates opened, you can turn on your TV at 11 a.m. and watch college football till 2, 3 in the morning. As the time zones move over, as the sun goes down. So, I guess we sort of saw this coming. This has been coming a long time, where college football is becoming more and more NFL-like, or you could call it a semi-pro league, or you could call it the NFL's minor league. And this is just more science that's going that way. I know there's a lot of people, Greg, are saying, I wish it was the old days where it was true amateurism. And we talked about this. That amateurism ship sailed decades ago. And this is where it was always going to end up this way. It was just a matter of which teams would be the linchpin to really tilt the fulcrum. I mean, it's not going to go full Super League for a while yet, because the ACC is still under their TV contract, still up for like 15 years. They just signed a new one. But you got the ACC, you got the SEC, you got the Pac-12, you got the Big Ten. There's ultimately, Greg, I bet you right now, there's going to be two super conferences, one with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, the other the ACC and the SEC, with a few of these, a few of these teams out in the wilderness right now hoping to get in. And that's where it's going to. And I guess the fear is, what do you think is going to happen to the schools like Eastern, the teams in the MAC, the teams in the Mountain West, the teams in the Sun Belt, that really play sports at a loss? And the way things are going, because right now, like say Eastern, Central, Western play Michigan or Michigan State, the money they get from that game funds their damn department for a good portion of the year. That's the sort of thing I think is going to go away, because we're going to end up in a world where the blue bloods are just going to play each other. And especially now with the expanded playoff format, where I believe they're going to 12 teams, that means one or two losses now does not essentially eliminate you from consideration for the playoffs. And, if those losses say, you go 10-2, but your two losses are to the Alabama and Ohio State, well, you're probably going to make the playoffs anyway. So that's the direction we're heading. And I just feel bad for fans of the mid-majors, of the group of 6 schools, the people who, I guess, I just, we're seeing a seismic change. It's happening slowly. And ultimately, it's just going to turn out that college football, big-time college football and big-time college basketball are a pro sport. And the name, image, and likeness rulings have helped, which I agree with, but that has helped grease the skids. And now we're seeing some of the biggest schools saying, the hell with tradition, let's go make more money. And I have a feeling in 10 years we won't recognize the college sports landscape. It's going to change seismically.
I think it's been changing seismically, kind of before our very eyes. I think it's. You mentioned 30 years ago in the Big Two and Little Eight and so forth. I think that it has changed. Yeah. It just hasn't been necessarily in a big splash fashion where you just notice
drips and drabs. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But if you just look at the landscape of it over the past, like you said, 30 years or so, even less than that maybe, it has changed dramatically. And, I mean, all the way around, I mean, in every way, shape, or fashion, it has changed, not always for the good, of course.
Right.
I just, obviously these schools are doing what's best for them, Texas and Oklahoma. That's a huge loss, like you said, for Big 12.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to football. But then you got the Big Ten, which is a joke because they've got teams like Rutgers and Maryland and Nebraska. Right. What was there, 12 or 13 teams now in the Big Ten?
14.
Is it that many now?
Yeah, it's 14. Because they've added Penn State, Nebraska, Rutgers, and Maryland. And most of those were because TV contracts.
Exactly. And let's face it. I mean, Maryland, are they going to move the meter to Rutgers? Really?
Well, yeah, but then again, I'll tell you this. They got Maryland because the Washington, D.C. TV market, and they got Rutgers for the New York City TV market, and Nebraska because they still thought Nebraska would be a power in football, and they have really shit the bed in the Big Ten, but that was why. But it's, I think the main concern is if you're a fan of those big power teams, they're still going to play big games in front of thousands of fans on national television. But what's going to happen to the MAC and the Sun Belt and the Big West and Mountain West and the Missouri Valley, all those conferences that have small schools that do play some entertaining sports, but don't have national fan bases or, as they say, don't move the needle when it comes to TV contracts. I would not. You have to wonder if 20 years from now, some of these schools just walk away from sports altogether and just make them intramural or club sports.
Well, I mean, why do you suppose Notre Dame resisted for years joining a conference? I mean, why should they?
Yeah, they still are, even though this may change things as things are going.
Well, they might, but I mean,
it looks like if they do go, it would be the ACC, which makes no sense because they're a natural fit for the Big Ten.
Well, that's that you talked about national fan bases, and Notre Dame obviously has a national fan base, so no question about that. Yeah. They're not regional by any stretch of the imagination, and they are, let's face it, a school, especially in football, that you love or hate. They're kind of like the Dallas Cowboys.
That's a good comparison.
You either love them or hate them. They've got a lot of rivalries around the country. USC, of course, Michigan to a degree.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Most of the rivalries are Big Ten and Pac-12.
Right.
Yet they're spending most of their time with the ACC.
Right, and you need a healthy. You need these schools to be good, Al. You mentioned Nebraska. There was a time when Nebraska was so good. I mean, they were just ridiculously good. Now you've got obviously the powerhouses are Alabama, Ohio State, and so forth. And your worry is warranted about it being so top heavy. Yeah. And I don't know how these other schools. We were talking with I remember we were talking with Chris Creighton, head coach at Eastern, and you asked him, gosh, what about these Tuesday night games? What about these Wednesday night games? How do you handle that as a coach and as a football team? He says, you know what? Do them because that's where the money is.
Exactly. If we want to be on TV.
If we want to be on national TV, i.e. ESPN or wherever they're going to be on, usually ESPN, we take what they give us. Yeah. And they're not going to put us on the big time ESPN usually on the Saturday afternoon, so we have to take a Tuesday night game and screw everything up. He says it's not, and he says those games aren't. And you had asked him about, the whole experience. He said, look, it's not about the fans, unfortunately. It's not about it's because it's a terrible inconvenience to everyone, really, the coaches, the players, and the fans to have a Tuesday night game, for God's sakes. Yeah. It starts at 8:00 at night or whatever. Yeah.
In 20-degree weather, it's crazy what they subject themselves to.
But it's for the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't blame those schools for taking that money. I mean, I would take it too. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it stinks to play a college football game on a Tuesday night because it screws the whole, thing up. I understand that, but that's what you got to do to get the money. That's why, you'd have a big time school like Michigan play a little dinky school, because that little dinky school gets a huge financial boost from taking that game. Yeah. And that's why Oakland, that's why Greg Campy plays all those big schools.
Right.
He knows he's going to lose. I mean, their record is probably 2 in a million, but he plays these schools because that's good for his kids to play that kind of competition. They get to be on national television.
That's a recruiting tool, saying you get to play Michigan and Michigan State.
Yeah, absolutely. And his teams have given Michigan State a scare. Right. On occasion when Michigan State was really, really good.
Right.
Michigan State. I remember one year it needed overtime to beat Oakland.
Yeah.
So I mean, the whole thing is driven by money, and that's a big surprise, of course. But That's why this whole thing about this landscape changing seismically has been going on, like you said, in drips and drabs for years.
Yeah, and I think they're just being more blatant about it now.
Yeah,
They're saying there's, because it's and plus now you also get fan bases, which I think if you would have told like the Oklahoma fan base 30 years ago that we're leaving the Big 12, they would have been upset. No, they would have been pissed. Because of traditions, because then they wouldn't be able to play Nebraska and Oklahoma State and so on and so forth. And now they're like, yeah, we want to go to the SEC because the SEC is considered the top football conference in the country now. No, tradition be damned, because now we want to play 7 o'clock on Saturday night on ESPN and national television. And so, it's just funny because remember when he talked about this? Remember a few months ago when the top pro teams in soccer in Europe wanted to put together a super league, and the fan bases lost their minds and demanded that it disband, and it ultimately did. There was numerous reasons it fell apart. The fans not wanting to be in one, and FIFA and some of the other organizations being against it all played into it. But I think that also plays into this is that with NCAA football, there is no central authority anymore. The NCAA has absolutely no power at all over the conferences. And I think the NIL rights, name, image, and likeness rights ruling come from the Supreme Court. Essentially, that was like the last, it pretty much took away the last of whatever real power the NCAA had over their membership schools for the most part. The NCAA powers that be essentially said, it's up to the conferences. They can do whatever the hell they want at this point. That's the way it's looking. And essentially that's what's going on here. The schools and the conferences are just going to do whatever the hell they want. And essentially it's going to get, because doesn't can't the NCAA do something? No. Because what the NCAA is? The NCAA is the schools. The schools are the NCAA. The NCAA, the Mark Emmets of the world have absolutely no power. I should say the power, what little power they have is given to them by the schools. And the schools right now are making all the decisions anyway. So it's, I have a feeling in 10, 15 years when we're old men, Greg, and we're sitting on our porches in our rocking chairs holding shotguns telling kids to stay off our lawn, we're not going to recognize what college sports looks like anymore. I guess the big thing is that's the one thing is that is what's going to happen to the schools that sports are a money loser, because it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And if these things happen where you're going to see the big schools stop playing those small school games for the revenue reasons, for the record reasons, they won't need to anymore. It's going to kneecap the Eastern Michigans of the world, and who knows where that leads us. So it's something that's going to be worth watching, but right now it's absolutely fascinating just to see what's all the pearl clutching going on right now. Because if people didn't want this to happen, they should have been talking about this 30 years ago. But no, here we are. So, all right.
I'm not sure, Al, real quick, I'm not sure if I can't make up my mind if having all this stuff be out in the open, like you said, like it's all out in the open now. That this is not this whole amateur athlete, college athlete thing.
Yeah, amateurism is dead.
And I can't decide whether or not yet if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Part of me says that, well, if it's out in the open, then maybe now some of these issues that we've already seen it with the NIL scenario. If maybe some of these things that we've been squawking about might get addressed if now that it's out in the open.
Right.
But then I'm thinking, well, if it is out in the open, is it just going to embolden? Is it going to get worse? I don't know yet. I lean toward it's a good thing that this is out in the open because now we can actually have serious, discussions about this stuff instead of pretending like it's something that it's not.
Right.
And I like to think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I agree with you there. Yeah. Let's pull the stuff out of the shadows. Get rid of the bagmen and the pay under the table payments and kids getting cars and whatever. Because the way things are now, the stuff that got SMU the death penalty, that's like child's play at this point. People just roll their eyes and look at what went down with SMU, Southern Methodist, absolutely having their program destroyed. That's just commonplace today. And as you said, it's not above the board because of, instead of giving Eric Dickerson a car under the table, now they just say, okay, well, here's, we'll put your, we'll use your picture in an ad, and in payment, here's a Trans Am. No, that's the difference. That's it. Essentially they just made it legal what SMU was doing 35 years ago. So, I don't, it's just going to be fascinating to see what goes down because right now, Texas and Oklahoma are saying right now we plan to join the SEC in 2025. They're not going to wait that long. There's going to be a negotiation, and I would not be surprised if they're in the SEC next season. So, and we'll probably talk about it then, or there's going to be more. There's more shoes are going to drop. I'm just curious to see what those shoes are. All right, before we wrap up the show, we got to talk a little Tigers because we're almost to the trade deadline. Trade deadline is the 31st. I believe that's this Saturday. The Tigers followed up their 7-game winning streak with a 4-game losing streak, and their road loss streak has reached 8. And as I look at my TV right now, the Tigers are losing 4-0 in Minnesota in the second inning. So it's not looking good for them again. Regardless of all that, at least, Craig, that has shut down some of the maybe this is a good team. Maybe they should buy at the deadline. Maybe they just might compete for the wild card. I think they kind of shut all those people up. But what's going on with their record and how they're playing right now has led to the Al Avila stating, when asked about the trade deadline, we're not rebuilding anymore. We're building. So right now, I guess the money quote here is, any deal they make now or from here on out will be made with the idea of making the team better instead of flipping vets for lottery ticket prospects who probably would not contribute for a few years, if ever. The Tigers want players ready to contribute in 2022 and on. And the players already in the big leagues have to be established, so on and so forth. Essentially, they are not looking for lottery tickets anymore. They are not looking for they want major league ready prospects, not lottery tickets. The problem is, Greg, most of the tradable players are hurt. Specifically Spencer Turnbull, who now needs Tommy John surgery. We won't see him again probably almost 2 years. Right. Matt Boyd still on the shelf because of a left tricep tendonitis. Again, Matt Boyd and injuries. What are you going to do? And Michael Fulmer, who I think got activated today. He's been out. He was out for a month with a sore neck. Michael Fulmer and injuries are like peanut butter and jelly at this point. So I'm not anticipating a busy trade deadline right now, Greg, because of what Avila said, that they want to establish winning, that they think of themselves as now they're building up rather than tearing down. So that, and the other factor is, there's talk, well, why don't they trade a guy like Jonathan Scope? Well, what are you going to get for a second baseman with an 800 OPS who's only under contract for 2 more months? You're not going to get a prospect who is of his talent and will never be of his talent. So I'm not expecting any big moves at the trade deadline because of those 2 reasons: between the injuries And the fact that I think they want to establish more of a winning atmosphere, and I think A.J. Hinch is playing into that as well. I don't think he would be a fan of a sell-off. That I would not be surprised if the trade deadline is just status quo. They don't make a deal at all.
Yeah, this is this is a funny time right now. They're still a work in progress. They're still not a very good team. They'll still drive you crazy. And
yes,
the fans crazy. They won 7 in a row out of the All-Star break, and then promptly lost 4, probably 5 now in a row to not very good teams. Why? Because they're not a very good team either. I mean, let's face it, they're just not very good. They'll win 70, 75 games, and that's okay because you can make a leap from there to above 500 if you make the right moves.
Right. Yeah.
It's not, it's not years and years away.
And you've been writing about this on Out of Bounds.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like this is the time now to, they've gotten rid of a lot of big contracts. And now the scope thing is interesting. This is really interesting because, I can see a lot of different sides of the both
there's a lot of stuff going on with him.
He did hire Scott Boras, which means probably an extension is off the table.
Yeah, he wants to get paid if you get Scott Boras.
Right. Boras
and he's having a really good year. He deserves
Boras,
it.
Yeah. Boras doesn't do in mid-season or in-season extensions.
No. And he doesn't do cheap ones either.
His clients always go to the free agent market, open market, that's how he makes his money. I mean, we've seen this so many times before where you've got a player who says he wants to be in Detroit.
Right.
He's not the first person to say this. They all say that.
Yep.
Most of them say that. I want to be here when things get good. Well, now you can actually see things getting good. I mean, when they traded guys like Castellanos and Verlander and you name it, on and on and on, Upton and on and on and on, JD Martinez, they were not going to be good for a number of years. And even though those players may have been sad to go, they also understood that winning was not going to happen here quite some time. Now a guy like Scope, who doesn't have that same cash as the players I just mentioned, is a good player though, and says he wants to be in Detroit, but that rings hollow after he hired Boras. If he, it's not to say they can't still sign him at the end of the year. It makes him, to me, more unlikely that he would sign. I don't like the idea of trading him now. I prefer. I know people say, "Well, why would you want to lose him and get nothing?" Well, what are you going to get for a guy who is a rental?
Yep.
Who's going to be with the team for? And we said this 2 weeks ago. It sounds like a broken record.
Yeah.
He's going to be with your team for 2 months, and he's gone. What are you going to get for somebody like that? You mentioned some young.
You're going to get a long shot
prospect, right?
Yeah.
Some kid who's 21 years old who will never see the light of day. We'll never hear from him ever again.
Right.
To me, that's the same as nothing. I mean, I would rather take my chance, hold on to him, see if I can indeed sign him. I mean, just who knows? I mean, it may not happen.
That's the thing. He's played his way into saying, he deserves a multi-year contract, and he's not going to block anybody if you do sign him. The Tigers don't have a second baseman.
You don't have to trade him. I mean, you don't. I mean, this notion of, hey, why would you want to just play out the string with him and get nothing in return? I look at nothing and what they would get at the deadline as almost the same thing. I really, truly. I would rather take my chances, roll the dice, play out the year with him, see if you can sign. If you don't sign me, don't sign him. And now that would create another hole on the roster if you don't. But it's not like you'd be trading for your second baseman of 2022 at the trade deadline.
Exactly.
Either.
Yeah.
So I find a big time hole in that argument. I really do. Now, if the Tigers were 2 or 3 years ago, they were losing 155 games, and I'd say maybe trade him, spin him for flip him for somebody else.
Right.
Sure. But when you're at the point now where you're building a roster, just like that's what Avila said, we're building, not rebuilding. You're building a roster. It looks like you're getting the center of the diamond. Yeah. If you can get a shortstop, which they need badly, And now you've got center field, shortstop, second base, and catcher. Just Jake Rogers' injury notwithstanding, you've got the makings of a decent up the middle type of team.
Yep.
So, they're just at the point now where I think they're not that far off.
Yeah.
I know that at times it looks like they are because they'll lose a million games in a row to crappy teams, but they really aren't that far off. I mean, especially in that division, those other teams they're losing to are not great either. I mean, the Twins, the Royals, and even the Indians are falling. It's not a great division.
Yeah. No, so, the Guardians, they're the Guardians now.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Guardians. So, I mean, I personally would hold on to them. Obviously, if somebody came in with some sort of ridiculously good offer that you couldn't resist, well, yeah, but I just don't know. First of all, I don't know what that would be, what that would entail, and I don't know whether any team would do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. I'm looking. Then you got to look around baseball, Al, and say, okay, which team or which teams are a Jonathan Scope away from winning the whole thing, or a Jonathan Scope away from making a deep playoff run? With all due respect to Scope, he's had a good year and he's been good here. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah.
But with all due respect, I don't know if there's any teams that are. I mean, he's a nice piece to have. If I'm a contender, and the Tigers have been on the other side of the coin, 10 years ago. If I'm a contender and Scope is attractive, I'm not saying he's not. I mean, he could be a piece. Definitely a nice piece to add toward down the stretch, but I don't know that he's like, if we just had a guy like Scope, if you've got a team though, Al, and a lot of crazy things can happen in the days leading up. Guys get hurt the day before the deadline, and all of a sudden teams that didn't think they were in the didn't think they were buyers, all of a sudden now oh my God, our second baseman went down. We need to get a guy in here real quick. That could still happen. The deadline is still a few days away. Yeah. But I just don't know what you would give Al. What would you give Al Avila for Jonathan Scope, knowing darn well that he's not going to re-sign with you? I don't care who you are. He's not going to. He's got Scott Boras as an agent. All the things we're talking about with Boras applies to those teams too, not just the Tigers.
Yeah.
So the team that acquires him. Do they really think that so it would be strictly a guy that they would have for a couple months? Now, granted, we've seen those kind of guys indeed get traded and indeed, like Castellanos did with the Cubs, to go on a tear. Now, Scope's already been on a tear. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He might be due to cool off, but he's still a good player. I mean, there's no question about it. I'm not saying he's not. But I just, to me, it's the return, Al. It's not so much. It's not so much. To me, it shouldn't be about the fear of not signing him, because I know that that's there. It's about what are you going to get. And I just don't think that what you would get is all that better than nothing.
And I still think A.J. Hinch has a lot to say about this. I don't think he wants to see a big sell-off of guys that help him win games. And I think that's playing something into it as well. And
I think how would this play? Here's the other thing. How would you mention Hinch?
Yeah.
How would this play with the fan base? It's getting really tiresome around here to see guys like that get traded.
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Oh yeah, I feel the same way about the Pistons fans saying, "Well, let's trade Jeremy Grant." That makes no sense at this point. Yeah.
There comes a time where you mentioned Hinch being, he wouldn't necessarily be happy about that. Although I'm sure he'd play the company line and say,
of course he would, yeah.
But. Hinch probably looks at Scope as potentially. Now, he's not stupid. He knows that Scope is a free agent at the end of the year, and he knows that the Tigers have maybe a less than 50% chance of signing him, but they have a 0% chance of signing him if they trade him.
If they trade him, right? Exactly.
So I think that I don't know. I think the fans are getting tired of seeing good players. I think they think, and they should think this, that they're past that now. And then what Al Avila said about we're building, we're not rebuilding. Now, sometimes this stuff is out of your hands. Right. A guy's going to be a free agent. That you can't stop that. That's just the way it is. Nothing you can do short of if Avila was good. Now, I blame Avila, frankly, for some of this, because if Avila was maybe should have been a little bit more progressive, a little bit more aggressive, and signed Scope to an extension, maybe either in spring training or in April or May. I mean, maybe that's what he should have done. Really, is just locked him up and have this not be a concern. It's probably what he should have done. I don't know what the asking price would have been, but to give him maybe 3 more years scope, in April or May, to show the commitment to him and to the fan base, frankly, and to Hinch and everybody that, okay, we got our second baseman now. We don't have to worry about that for the next X amount of years. He's the guy that's going to play second base for us in our next playoff game. Well, now he was slow on the uptake, and now he's hired Boris, and forget it. Forget the extension. That's off the table now. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. And, if you're going to make a trade a reliever. That's where it seems you might actually get some value in return. I mean, the few trades, deadline trades where Al Avila has seemingly gotten some productive-looking players back is when he's traded relief pitchers. And he probably could get something decent for Gregory Soto or Jose Cisnero. Even Funkhauser, who hasn't been bad. Those. I think if you're going to make a trade, I think that's what you look like. That's what you're looking to deal. I did find an interesting rumor that there was talk that Jeimer Candelario has been brought up in trade talks, and I think they're coming to the point of Candelario where I think he's 28 years old now. He's legit Major League Baseball talent, but he's essentially a league average player at his position, and how much are you willing to pay a guy who gets on base? Right now his on base finish is 351, but he does not hit for power, which means his OPS is like only around 750. So that's another decision the Tigers have made. They may be willing to move on from Candelario, thinking that maybe we can play Willie Castro at third base or Torkelson at third base or someone else in the minor league system. And maybe we can get something for Candelario, because Candelario, again, he's not going to get you a ton, but the question is, are you willing to pay Jeimer Candelario $8 or $9, $10 million a year for a guy who's going to hit, who's going to get on base at a 340 clip and hit 10 home runs? So we're now into that era of the roster where the Tigers are going to have to start making some decisions on players they thought might be core. And now they might not be, because they've become decent major leaguers, but they're not needle movers. Like, I don't think Candelario at this point of his career is going to be a needle mover. He is a guy. He's Robbie Grossman maybe, but a worse Robbie Grossman, so to speak. Yeah,
no, that's fair. And as you're talking about Candelario, I'm thinking about a lot of other players who've been of that ilk, who have been through Detroit and just have not really they are who they are, and that's fine. I mean, not everybody can be a superstar. That's fine.
Yeah, he's Cameron Maybin, or who was that outfielder that they said was a 5-tool guy? About 15, 10. Yeah, really. What was his name? Juan. You know who I'm talking about? God damn it! Why can't I think of his name now? I'd have to go back and look it up.
When did he play for?
Probably mid 2000s.
Oh, Encarnacion?
Encarnacion, yes. He was another one who was they thought might be a star, and he turned out to be a guy who had a legit major league career, but he was nothing special. Yeah. And that's, I think, what they have to determine with Candelario. Is he what you see right now? Is that what he's going to be? And if that's what he's going to be, maybe you move on from him, because you don't want to pay Jeimer Candelario $9 million a year for 10 home runs and a 330 on base percent.
Right, and you mentioned roster moves and things. This is a very delicate time right now for the Tigers and their rebuild, because this is where you can really screw it up. I mean, you don't necessarily have a high risk of screwing things up early in a rebuild, because you're not really going to get. I mean, that's just, to me, low risk, high reward stuff. But now you're into the portion of the rebuild where the moves you make or don't make could really come back to haunt you. I mean, really, and that's why this is a very delicate right now. Now, here's something crazy. Mm-hmm. Why, if you're going to trade, you mentioned reliever, but if you're going to trade anybody in the offseason, not the deadline necessarily.
Yeah.
But if you're looking to really maybe, but would you consider trading a Manning in the offseason? Would you consider trading a Skubal? Yeah. I know that might seem sacrilege to some people.
But if it gets you an impact
because
bat,
all this young pitching that the Tigers have been gathering up and hoarding. But on the other hand, we've all seen how mercurial pitchers can be. You mentioned Turnbull with the Tommy John and so forth. Might you be so bold as to trade a guy like Skubal or Manning in a package in the off season? Not now. In the off season to get a frontline third baseman or a frontline. And again, I don't know how the pieces would work.
Right.
But would there be team now? I don't know what you would get for a reliever even right now. But if you dangled Matt Manning or Tariq Skubal in front of some people, you might have something. Now you might have something that teams might be willing to give you. If you get a high upside starting pitcher like that, a young starting pitcher, you might get back a frontline position player.
Yeah,
that might be a way you can go too.
Yeah, and just for giggles, I did look up Juan Encarnacion. He ended up playing 11 years in the bigs. Oh, yes, I am.
You're on mute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just for giggles, I looked up Juan Encarnacion. He played 11 years in the big leagues.
Wow, 11.
11 years, won a World Series with Florida in 2003, and made $33 million.
Wow.
And he was essentially a guy. His career OPS was 758. His career on base percentage was 317. Yet he made $33 million. He was considered as a disappointment as a Tiger because he was sold as, one of the building blocks of the future of that early 2000s Tigers, and he became just a guy. But he ended up having a nice career. You could say that about a few guys like that. But that's what I think the Tigers are with this roster at this point is. They need to determine if he's just going to be a guy. Maybe you see what you can get for him at the trade deadline. That goes for arms and bats. So, but I agree with you. If they want to really make a huge splash, it has to be with one of their high-end pitchers because that's the only thing I think that would actually get them
in a trade,
real value in trade.
Right? In a trade. But I'm looking at Encarnacion as well, and I tell you those mid to late those Randy Smith years. Oh my God, did that set the franchise back? So many. My goodness gracious! It's amazing. It's amazing that the Tigers were able to get themselves out of that as quickly as they did. I mean, really, that could have gone on for many more years.
This shows how good Dave Dombrowski was.
To bring in Pudge and Ordonez and Guillen and Polanco. My gosh.
Yeah.
Those again. This is where it's so dangerous right now. Mm-hmm. These moves now. This is where it gets serious. Okay, it's 3-4 years ago.
It's easy to tear down, but building up, that's a different story altogether.
You're at that point now where a couple of bad moves you set you back another 3 or 4 years again, and the Tigers are going to have to look. A guy like Candelario, who I don't know what kind of trade value he has because, like you say, he's basically a zero-war player. But I think you're going to have to do something kind of bold, and if it means trading a guy like Skubal or Manning, or even no, I wouldn't trade Mize. I wouldn't go that far, but Skubal or Manning and somebody like that, maybe even
Riley Green or someone like that.
That's tough to do. I know that. That's a lot of balls to do that. But it depends on what you can get back.
Right.
But the X factor here, Al, is how deep the pockets are going to be in the offseason. How deep will the pockets be? I know the Tigers they're not going to be able to buy their way out of this. They're going to have to make some shrewd moves in addition to. But buying is going to help them a lot. There's no question about that. It's not going to solve all their ills because you can't go out there and buy everything. But they need to do something bold, I think, on the trade front. And I hate to break it to the Tigers fans, but I think that's going to have to involve a Manning or a Skubal getting traded. Yeah. I just don't.
Yeah, and which plays into they took two highly rated pitchers in this last draft. So you build a stockpile of arms. One because they get hurt, and two because they're trade fodder. As we said to Yzerman, you build up draft capital not just to make these picks, but you can trade. In baseball, you can't trade the picks per se, but you trade those players for other things. Even though the market has changed, where you're not going to get super high end prospects for a Jamer Candelario or a Joplin Scope, the way things used to be. If you have something of value and you can get something you desperately need in return, you definitely have to think about that. And I think we both agreed the Tigers desperately need a high impact bat. And you probably get one in free agency, if they get one of the high end shortstops. But you can't fill every hole with the draft, and you can't fill every hole with free agency. You've got to fill holes with trades. And that's where Dave Dombrowski was just a wizard. He was able to plug holes in trades, and just look at the Tigers, the center of the Tigers infield. We're both from trade in Polanco and Guillen, for example. 2 all-stars that he picked up in trade. So, but you have to, if you got value, you got to give up value. So you're right on where this is a very dangerous time for the Tigers, because 1 or 2 mistakes and a rebuild is set back 5 years. I mean, we saw that with the Pistons, with some of the roster moves they've made over the past 10 years, where, Joe Dumars making some hugely mistaken free agency signings to the last regime making some hugely irresponsible trades. So it's now I'm nervous thinking about what Alavila might do. Yeah. All right. With that, we need to start wrapping things up, because I'm sure Greg's got a cold cocktail waiting for him, and Bean probably right next to it waiting to get petted. So who's your jerk of the week?
Well, I hate to bring Donald Trump into any of our discussions.
Oh, boy. That's okay. Go for it.
I saw a clip in his most recent rally in Arizona over the weekend, and he's got the crowd booing the United States soccer team, women's soccer team.
Oh, boy.
And these are the people that call themselves patriots.
Yeah.
And booing a U.S. Olympic team is just, it saddens me. It saddens me. And it's all because of some sort of political BS. And, these people are supposedly patriots, just booing a U.S. Olympic team. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's sad. It makes me angry. I shouldn't let that kind of thing bother me, because they're a bunch of morons, but it bothers me. It still bothers me, because it's not right. And, it bothers me that somebody could whip up a crowd like that into a frenzy such that they do boo a U.S. Olympic team. He could probably get people to boo, Santa Claus. It bothers me, and I really don't think more I can say other than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the less we talk about that man, the better. But yeah, the fact it's absolutely ridiculous rooting against any Olympic athlete, period, considering the sacrifices they have to make to get to that level. We're seeing it right now. What's going on with Simone Biles, who said she was having it was a mental issue as to why she dropped out of the team competition today, and which led to the U.S. team getting the silver instead of the gold. Now, I am in no position to make any kind of judgment about someone's mental health. What's going on with Simone Biles, for example. And or I'm not about to rip on I find ripping, especially amateur athletes, even though they are getting paid, through they are getting at least a stipend through the government, or the USOC, I should say, and they are able to get endorsements, NIL. They do get money that way. We're not talking about multimillionaire pro sport athletes. These are, they're it's different with Olympic level athletes, and I'm just not going to. I'm with you. I just can't get behind ripping them for essentially representing our country and for the most part, even if they don't win, they do a great job of showing the best of what this country can do. And then we have someone like Donald Trump shitting all over it. So I'm completely with you there. All right. God, where can I go with my jerk of the week? There's so much to pick from lately. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to go with a head coach of. Go with the. Let me think here. Go with the head coach of Stanford, David Shaw.
Okay.
And he went on about, because some athletes are really cashing in on the NIL rights. For example, the quarterback of Alabama, Bryce Young, is reportedly making some serious bank on signing some brand deals. Getting some endorsement deals, which is entirely legal now. And Nick Saban had hinted that he might be at the 7-figure mark. That's how crazy they are for football down, in Alabama, for example. And David Shaw takes offense to that, the head coach of Stanford. His quote: "A kid gets a 7-figure deal before he even starts a game. That's fair market value? I don't think that's fair market value. That's Alabama value." This coming from a guy who is making tens of millions of dollars as a college head coach at a school which is supposed to be academics first. The hypocrisy we're talking about here. Now that we're starting to see the hypocrisy from coaches, now that the players finally able to cash in on the billions of dollars that's out there, that's brought in from college sports, are able to make a little jack from it, maybe be able to set up their families for a while. And here we have college head coaches essentially insulted by it, even though they've made tens of millions of dollars off the back of these kids' labor. Oh my God. We're just going to see more of this stuff from head coaches. They're going to get so sanctimonious about this that some schools have an advantage of having a rich or rabid fan base. There's talk like Michigan may end up having an advantage, and Ohio State would have an advantage in the Big Ten because of their very wealthy and rabid fan bases. So it just comes off as sanctimonious and hypocritical for a guy like David Shaw to rip on a kid taking advantage of the opportunities given to him. Isn't that the point of college? To learn how to make yourself better, how to take advantage of things, how to help yourself, how to learn how to help yourself. Well, the kid's doing it perfectly. He's doing exactly what you need to learn in college, how to better yourself. And he's doing that monetarily. And the fact that David Shaw is insulted by such things, we're going to see more of this from other college coaches. And it's just going to be so easy to pick apart. So my jerk of the week is David Shaw and other college football coaches who have shown their true colors over the past couple of years, just how out of the loop and how hypocritical they can be for being upset that a kid doing it legally is making some serious jack off his name. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, it's what we were talking about all this stuff now being out in the open. Now we're starting to find out, starting to really find out what's going on here. Just wanted to remind everybody that you can follow us on Twitter at The Knee Jerks. Follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno. And, of course, read me on my WordPress Out of Bounds blog just about every week. Just search Greg Eno Out of Bounds and you'll find it. And catch me there. And want to thank my lovely wife, Sharon, for putting up with all this nonsense every other week. And thank you, Big Al, for making Tuesday night so gosh darn fun.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe I should make the little thumbnail of the podcast, not of it says right now it says the Knee Jerks. Maybe it should just be a picture of one of your pasta dishes or something. But also, again, thank you, Greg, for taking time out of your very busy week and your very cushy new car to talk sports with me for a couple hours. Give a shout out to Linda, who is busy saving lives in the ER and is absolutely sick and tired of you yahoos who are not vaccinated, as am I, as am Greg, and as of everybody else in their right mind. To listen to the show, we can be found at all usual places. Just do a search for the Knee Jerks, Eno and Big Al. Usually the Knee Jerks would be enough, but you can find us at all the usual podcast places: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Deezer, Radio Public. The homepage of the Knee Jerks is thekneejerks.net, where you can find all the links and show notes. And if you want to listen to this on your computer or get the MPT directly, that's the place to get it. Essentially, any places podcasts are aggravated, you can find the Knee Jerks. Greg got out the social media. Do we have anything coming up on the upcoming guests or anything like that in the near future?
I'm gonna work on somebody. I'm not sure yet. I didn't get a chance to do it this time, but I'm gonna try to get us something for 2 weeks from now. I'll keep you posted.
So consider that a teaser, people. Greg is teasing a possible guest. Big name, it might be. Big, it might not be. We don't know. He's teasing us with that right now. All right, with that, let's get the hell out of here, because actually I could use a beer myself. So I got to start packing to go up north again. So with that, let's get the hell out of here. So we will see you in 2 weeks. Actually, by that point, the Lions will be in will be in training camp. The Pistons will have made the draft, because that's something we really didn't have. There's not much to talk about the Pistons right now because their draft is on Thursday, so we'll have a lot to talk about. I'm sure Troy Weaver will be all kinds of busy over the next week. We'll have a lot to talk about with that. And, of course, the trade deadline of the Tigers. We'll have that to talk about in the next podcast. And who the hell knows what will happen else to give us some fodder to rant and rave. So until then, when we can talk about all those things and whatever else comes on our mind, this is Al Beaton saying good evening, good luck, and aloha.
Ciao, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks.